Your topic is provocatively titled Them.
Yes.
And who are they?
I don't know. I don't think anyone does.
Do they mean us harm, or are they coming in peace? Do you know?
It's too complicated to answer that question.
We don't know. Will we ever know?
I would assume that we will eventually know one way or another.
There seems to be an added attention to this now with these new government hearings. 60 Minutes did a thing about some sightings. Do you think there's more credence now for the UFO experience?
It doesn't interest me much, that sort of thing. I do know that Robert Bigelow, who's been involved in this sort of material for a while, went on 60 Minutes and had the courage to say he had had a close encounter experience. And and there have been some things recently released that would suggest that it's becoming gradually clearer that whatever this is, the close encounter experience is part of it, along with the UFOs.
Back in the day, when you were on The Tonight Show, there was much less believing in it, wasn't there? You were sort of an outlier.
It was horrible. The whole experience of the media in those days was a dreadful thing. And I had a very, very hard few years with it, and I don't like to think about it.
Well, let's hope this experience is a little better.
We shall see.
Tell me, why do you think it is that with all this technology we have, not just with the military technology, but the iPhone technology, that we can't get a more clear picture of these UFOs? They don't seem to be, they always seem to be fuzzy.
They're not fuzzy. I have some, I'll show in my lecture tomorrow, a very clear image that was taken in the private sector and isn't classified. There are images in the classified area that are very clear indeed, and hopefully some of those will be released soon. Already some have been released, of course, from the U.S. Navy, and but those were all radar returns basically from targeting cameras on fighter jets. There are images that are made by regular optical cameras that are crystal clear. And they have already, some of them I believe are all already in the classified portion of that briefing. Hopefully they will be released to the public.
Why do you think the government has, they're now starting to have hearings, but for many years they didn't even admit that there were UFOs. Why was that?
The United States government didn't admit that there were UFOs here because of the fact that they were unable to stop the connection that was developing between the average person and this phenomenon, because it was a very difficult experience for people, and they did not wish to say that they had no way of stopping it. And why it's beginning to become more public now, I don't know.
Do you think there are aliens among us?
I don't know if there are any aliens here at all. I don't even know if that's what this is about. We don't know what it is yet, and to assume anything about it is a mistake.
So when you talk about tomorrow afternoon, you're going to talk about the uncertainty, the unidentified.
I'm going to talk about the experience of living with it and having them in your life without coming to any conclusions about what they are or where they're from, because I don't have that information. What I can talk about is what has happened to me. I cannot talk about what they are because nobody has ever told me that, including them.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
It's been quite a wonderful and extraordinary experience now, but at first it was very difficult. I was raped, and semen was forcibly removed from my body, and it was an awful, awful thing to have happen to you. I could not do anything about it, and I suffered for years from the injuries that were involved. I had medical attention to the consequences of the rape for 20 years after it happened. But at the same time, I was determined to try to engage with this in some way because, my God, it was real. And I had no idea that anything like that, this could even exist. And I did try to engage with it, and I have engaged with it, and now it's a reasonably productive relationship, I would say, and I don't want to go into any details about it, and I don't intend to do that tomorrow.
You were very young when this happened, right?
40.
You weren't that young when this
No, I
happened.
wasn't. It may have happened to me as a child. I've never been certain, but there's a lot of indications that it did. And that's not unusual. People are often involved in this from childhood, and it's pretty routine that they will forget the early experiences until later in their lives. And that seems to be what happened to me, but I've never been able to pin it down completely what the earlier experiences were. I'm not certain.
A lot of people do report about being abducted and being scanned or probed in different ways.
Well, that's the big joke, of course. Probed, ha ha ha. But that's a rape, and it's not funny.
Yeah. And you give credence to these accounts, right, of other people having these experiences.
I was raped, and I experienced injuries due to this that required long-term medical attention. That's what I can say.
Yeah. Okay. I think anything else we want to cover?
Anything we should ask you that we should?
No.